Hello, viewers. You're welcome to that word series here on Edify TV. Today, I'm here at Kotobabi Assemblies of God Church, that is specifically the Ebenezer Assembly, where I'm speaking to God's servant, Reverend Dr. John B. Ghartey is my guest today on that word series on Edify TV. Papa, you're welcome to Edify TV.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Um, I quite remember some years ago, you used to be the General Secretary of the Assemblies of God. Assemblies of God is a huge church in Ghana. For you become the General Secretary, how was the feeling like when you were elected as the General Secretary of that big church?
Yeah, it was awesome. But then I knew that God had prepared me for that position. And so I served, and I know I served well. For the 8 years that I was in office, I was able to work hard to effect some change and bring some visible development, working with my other colleagues to the church. And looking back, I'm happy I served.
Wow, wow. So having worked as a General Secretary, what other areas have your giftings and your grace taken you to impact throughout of now?
Before I served as the General Secretary, in fact, I've always been in the academia.
Okay.
I came down from, I studied in Kenya, came down from Kenya, and then immediately joined the International Central Gospel Church. I was the director of studies for their Bible school.
Okay.
And I transformed that Bible school into Central Christian College, and then later to Central University College. And I served as the Dean of the Faculty of Theology, also served my full term. And I think along the line, I also assisted Action Chapel with their Bible school, and also transformed it from Action International Bible College to Dominion Theological Seminary, and then later to Dominion University College. Yeah, so that, and along the line, I think I have assisted a few other charismatic churches to establish their Bible schools and taught, and so there are. I've raised in a few men of God.
Wow. Wow. Including my own father, Reverend Michael. Right. So, can you share with us, take us to the life of this humble servant of God, Reverend Dr. John B. Ghartey? Where did you start it from? Where did you school?
Okay. Of course, I was born in Dunkwao, Onofin, and but we moved to Cape Coast when I was very young, so I don't have any recollection of Dunkwao. But that's when I grew up in Cape Coast. Attended Okejagre Primary School, then later to the Zion Middle School, then to Adisadel College, and from there I moved to the Southern Ghana Bible Institute. At that time, now it is Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. Then traveled to Kenya to do my first degree, second degree. Came back. So that has been my academic journey, and but haven't worked in the system. Of course, along the line, I also did my PhD, and but I've been in ministry all this while, either teaching or pastoring, and currently I'm the senior pastor of Ebenezer Assembly of God here. Yes.
Growing up as a young boy, did you ever envisage becoming a minister of the gospel? Was it something that you desired, or it came along the
way? It is something I knew. My parents knew it, my friends knew it, because they started calling me Osofo at a very early age. If you know Bishop Michael Osebonsu, the musician, when he was very young, about 15, 16, when he started preaching. And I think at that time I was about 10, 12 years. And I would accompany him to Mankesim to preach. And so right there he started preaching, At the Southern College, I was with the Scripture Union, preaching. So they started calling me Osofo way before. My whole life has been an Osofo life.
Viewers, you're watching that word series on edifitv, and my guest today is Reverend Dr. John B. Ghartey. I must remind you that this program is brought to you by the Imbos Herbal Mixture, the Policinin Edru. In this era of COVID, all that you need to boost your immune system is Imbos Herbal Mixture. I'm going to ask my guest, about 4 years ago, I chanced on a book, and the title was so intriguing. Let me use the word intriguing. Dare to be a dad. And I sought for this man to have a conversation with him, to learn about him. Then fortunately for me, at a book launch of one of my directors at the Judicial Service, I was the moderator for the event. Here he was. And this is the man who authored this book, Dare to be a Dad. I must remind you, on Sunday, we are celebrating Father's Day, and this book is all about fathers. I'm going to have a discussion with him to take us through or walk us through the content, the ingredients, and the vitamins in this book as we celebrate Father's Day. Papa, now let me come to your book, Dare to be a Dad. What prompted even the title of this book?
I came across this statement by Pope John the 23rd, and he said it is easier for a father to have children than for children to have a real father. That time, I think I was preparing to preach and teach on, do a series on fatherhood, preparing for Father's Day. And then I realized that no, that is a very deep statement. So started looking at this. So my first sermon, I even titled it, Real Fathers Are Rare. Real fathers are rare, and so I had to set myself to research on fatherhood, and I was disappointed because I realized that we don't have much material on fatherhood. I mean, the market is awash with everything, motherhood, and so on, but nothing on fatherhood. And so I set myself to do this, and I realized that being a father is quite challenging. So one will have to be daring, to become a real father, and that is how I came up with the title, Dare to be a Dad.
Now, I want to open the content page and take one after the other. The introduction to this book says, Fathers also cry. In case you want to look at it, this is where it is, and this is the book we are talking about. Fathers also cry. How do you mean?
Yeah, that started out as an apology for fathers. You see, fathers are misunderstood, they are misconstrued, they are misquoted, they are mistreated, and everything. And because they are men and strong, people don't see it. But when the children do not appreciate their little efforts, when the women do not appreciate what they do, they also cry. They cry within. It's easier for the women or the wives to cry and yell that, oh, I'm not getting the attention, I'm not getting this. The children can cry, my father is not responsible, and this. But the men or the fathers are unable to cry out aloud. And they also have their concerns, they also have their challenges which are unspoken, and so sometimes our designation of some fathers as irresponsible may not be fair. So I had to look at this, and In the introduction, I talked about why they cry and how they cry. In fact, with the how they cry, you realize that because they internalize the pain and everything, they end up even changing their character. So a very calm person, now becomes an alcoholic because he is taking in too much. Sometimes he even becomes violent with the family when he was not like that. And sometimes you realize that to avoid all these things, he becomes a workaholic and prefers to stay at work rather than to come home and meet hostile situation. So fathers cry because some of the challenges they go through are not their own making. Number one, they do not have the needed information to make them effective fathers. And like I said, very little material on fatherhood. So no lack of information. We also realize that we lack icons like role models and so on. So with the lack of information, the lack of icons, and then lack of identity, why that? When does a person become a father? When do you start calling a person a father? Is it because he's had children? Because it is possible to have a child when you do not know. I mean, it's impossible for a mother to know that she's a mother, not to know that she's a mother. But because she carries the baby right from day one, but father is so detached from the child that he can spend 10 years, 15 years, 20 years until one day somebody tells him that, hey, you are my father, or this.
That mostly happens in the funerals and
yes, sometimes it happens.
In the case of the flight level rollers,
somebody came up, and and sometimes you may not even know that you are a father. And when these things happen, you then have the situation of identity, and that sometimes make fathers also cry, within. So that's how I introduced the book.
Now, in as much as I agree, but my next question that I'm going to ask, I want us to take a short break. When we come back, I'll take that question.
Okay.
We'll come back right away. You're welcome back to that word series on Edify TV. Before the break, I was going to ask my next question that has to do with what makes fathers failures. In his book, he captioned it Failures of Fathers. Let's get to Reverend Dr. John B. Ghartey to run us through what he meant by failures of fathers. Papa, take us through your caption in your book, Failures of Fathers.
Thank you. Talking about failures of fathers, I had to do a biblical research, and I chose 3 biblical characters, very famous, to establish the fact that you can be successful in your public ministry. You can be very successful in your public endeavors, and yet fail woefully, abysmally in the home. And out there, you may be a professional, you may be an executive, and what have you, a lecturer, a pastor, and be very successful, have all the accolades and so on. And yet, when you come home domestically as a father, you fail abysmally. I looked at Eli as a very successful high priest in Israel, and yet his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, who he had earlier appointed as priests, were misbehaving. And the Bible describes them with these words, that they did not know the Lord. So this was a priest, a high priest, who had made his children priests, serving in the temple, but the children did not know the Lord.
And an imposition on them sometimes.
Well, excuse me. I mean, sometimes you assume that because they are there and doing this and so on, but then they didn't even know the Lord, and so they were doing the wrong thing. We look at Samuel, arguably the greatest prophet in Israel. He started this whole institution of prophetism, set up schools of the prophet, school of the prophets in Ramah, trained prophets. He was an itinerant preacher, brought revival in Israel and all that. Great prophet by all standards. Started prophesying when he was just a little boy and so on. But while he stayed at Ramah and traveled all over Israel from Dan to Beersheba, his sons were in Beersheba serving as judges, and they were very corrupt. The statement the Bible uses about them is that they did not walk in the ways of their father. So here was Samuel, very popular with the children of Israel, but his sons. So at the time Samuel was supposed to retire, he thought he was handing over the baton to his children, but the elders of the land came to him and said, Samuel, we respect you, we accept your leadership as a prophet, we know you're a man of God, but your children, no. Someone said, listen, if you don't accept them and you have a king, just as you are calling for, this and this will happen. He will take your land, he will take your children, he will conscript them into the army, he will seize your gold. The people said, we like it, as long as it's not your children. So, of course, that also had its own effect on Samuel.
There is this question I want to ask. Judging from the Eli example, rather than to Samuel example, that Samuel was brought up by Eli. If the scripture says that, you know, the same, so to speak, the same devil that fought Eli is fighting what? Samuel. Sometimes, as fathers, you realize that the thing that your father did is also repeating itself in your own life. Is it a kind of a transfer or something?
I would hesitate to draw that conclusion, especially with Samuel and Eli. But that is also possible. But you see, Eli raised Samuel very well. He even taught him how to respond to the voice of God and so on. But he didn't do that for his own children, you know. And but you see, when the situation with our current situation, where what happened to the fathers also seemed to be happening. It's well, I'm not ruling out the fact that there could be some spiritual transference, but most of the time, what the people see at home is what they also do when they grow up. Just this morning, I was listening to somebody's story, and it's like there was a little boy. They were teasing him that, oh, when you grow up, we want you to marry this little girl. The boy was like, oh, then I'll beat him. Then I'll beat her. Then I'll beat her. So, oh, is that how to marry somebody? You just beat her? I said, but that's what my dad does. You know. So he sees the dad beat the mother. So in his mind, in his little mind, growing up, he thinks fathers are there to beat. And so when they tell him, oh, you will marry this girl, say, okay, then I'll beat her. That's the first thing. So if that is not corrected in his mind, he tends to think that is the norm. it's okay to do that, and then you find that being replicated. But then it's something we need to look at. But let me quickly move on with that, what I was developing. Then David, a very successful king, psalmist, worshipper, a man after God's own heart, a warrior by all standards. I mean, on a good day, David would take on giants and kill them, But if you look at what happened in his own house, it was chaotic. He had a few more wives, about 11 of them, who are mentioned in scripture with other concubines. He had about 19 children, recognized children, but they each lived with their mothers in houses built for the mothers. So 10 of them lived with him in the palace. So he couldn't impart certain virtues and values. So what do we see? Absalom staging a coup to oust his own father. Amnon lusting after his own sister, raping her. Absalom coming after Amnon, killing him. Adonijah crowning himself king. But, and we have all this commotion going on. And the point I'm making with all these men is that it is one thing being successful out there and another thing being successful domestically. These were successful public figures, and yet they failed. So looking at the failures, in the realm of their failures, I talk about the fact that they neglected doing certain things. They neglected praying for their children. We see Abraham doing that, Isaac doing that, Jacob doing that, Job doing that. And see how their families were. But people of the stature of Eli, Samuel, and David, the Bible doesn't record that. Of course, one would say that, but that doesn't also mean that they didn't. But looking at their stature, if they did, it would be recorded. It would reflect, And so they didn't pray for their children. They didn't also prepare their children to take after, to pick up the responsibilities from them. And they were also not present for their children. I mean, Samuel was busy traveling all over, conducting revivals. David was out there fighting and so on, and they were not there for their children. Interestingly, for Amnon to succeed in raping Tamar, he sought permission from David. He did it with the father's consent, and David didn't know that he was being played. So it was with David's permission that Tamar had to go to Amnon to prepare him food, and then got raped. It was with David's permission that Absalom invited the brothers for a party and then killed Amnon. So because he was not present, he was not involved in their lives, and so they could play around him, cleverly move him, and they got David very, very involved, and he regretted it. So praying for the children, preparing them, and then being present for them. And they did not also pass on that legacy to them.
Father must pray for them, prepare them, be present in their life, and also pass on legacy.
Exactly.
On this note, we take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I must remind you that this program is brought to you by the Imbos Herbal Mixture, Police in Inedruna. In this time of COVID, if you need something to boost your immune system, all that you need to go for is Imbos Herbal Mixture. At every chemical shop, pharmacy, you will get it at a cool 15 Ghana cedis. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to That Word series on Edify TV. I'm still here with God's servant, Reverend Dr. John B. Ghartey. Papa, you will take off from where we left off about what the fathers must do, the prayer, the preparation, being present, and passing on the mantle of legacy.
Yes.
Take us through.
Now, this is what these people did not do, and so they had problems. But then, in advising fathers, they need to do all this for and more. Now, you need to also play with the children. Be there, involved. I mean, get involved.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Sure.
Have fun with the children. And let them, endear yourself to them.
Sure.
Establish the rapport. Don't wait till they grow up, and then when they can't tell you stuff, then you get angry and, oh, why are you talking to your mother and not talking to me, and so on. Build that relationship. Play with them. Then praise them where they deserve to be praised. That is the only way you can also punish them when they are wrong. So you play with them, you praise them, you punish them, and all these. So I think in my book I mentioned about 13 things that fathers should do, and like you realize by now, they all begin with the
Viewers, in case you want to know the book that Daddy is talking about, this is the book we are talking about, Dare to Be a Dad. I believe every young man, I have read it, every young man, whether aspiring father or yet a father, still a father, whatever you are, you need a copy of this book in your life because it will help you a lot. Later on, I'll introduce some of the books that Papa has authored so that you get to the Assemblies of Bookshop and many other bookshops, you can get a copy of that. Papa, let's continue.
Thank you. So, well, that is for the fathers. Now, on that note, let me mention the final thing a father should do. The best gift a father can give the children is to love their mother. That's the best gift. You can do everything for your children, but the best gift you can give them is to love their mother. No matter who the mother is, the children love her. Children are fond of their mother. I mean, excuse me to say, even if she is physically challenged and what have you, she is their mother. She may have all the faults as a wife, but she is a mother. And so don't extend your husband-wife fight to the children. And you see, you can decide to replace your wife, but they cannot replace their mother. And sometimes when you have issues of divorce, you realize there is so much selfishness involved that fathers want to solve their problem by putting away the wife and getting another wife, but they've forgotten or they forget that by putting away that wife, they are putting away the mother of the children, and whoever you bring in will never be a mother. You can't replace a mother. And so if fathers will start treating mothers well, and when you do this, let the children know, and they will rise up to salute you when they see that you are respecting their mother. It happens naturally, and so one of the ways to raise good children is to love their mother. And of course, when they marry, you realize that they will also know how to treat
their wives.
Wow.
Now, let me get to my next question. I've reliably by a search saw that you have started something recently on the social media with fathers, that is captioned Lunchtime with Fathers. What is it about?
Yes, I set up this ministry, Frontier Fathers.
Okay.
And we intended to hold conferences for fathers and, public gatherings.
Sure.
And then this COVID set in. But then I realized that even without the public conferences, we could still reach fathers in their homes, in their offices. And so I switched on to the social media YouTube, Facebook,
Instagram.
and Instagram.
Okay.
And so every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m., I have a full 1 hour to discuss some of these issues that we are discussing. So, for example, being present for the children, I discussed it in 1 hour. You know, planning for them, in 1 hour, and so that's what I do. And so people can just go there on Wednesdays, 12 to 1 p.m. and just type the address JB Ghartey.
JB Ghartey.
JB Ghartey.
Okay.
And they can easily join.
You don't pay anything.
No, you don't pay anything. That's
wow.
it.
Viewers, I think this is a cool deal that we have to make use of. Every young man, every father out there, every Wednesday between 12 noon and 1 p.m. Just get on your social media platform, type in JB Ghartey, and you'll rightly be there and share a time of inspiration, insight, and edification with Papa. Now, Papa, let's zoom into practicality, practical issues that is happening in our society. And sometimes my heart bleeds as a young person because for me, professionally, where I work, because of my relationship with the court, I work with the court, and when we go on, we have this project called Justice for All program, and when we go to the prisons and other stuff, the inmates, about 95% of the inmates are young people, and especially young men. Recently, we hear of ritual murder for money, robbery. Just recently, about 3 days ago, a bullion van, police officer shot, and just about yesterday, we had another one happening along Cape Coast, Winneba Cape Coast Road. What exactly can you say about those happenings?
You are right in the observation, and I also quoted some statistics in my book that the number of school dropouts, the number of street children, the number of people in correctional facilities, the number of people who are abusing drugs, and so on. All, I mean, very high percentages, and all of them come from dysfunctional homes, or homes where fathers are not present. And when fathers fail, this is what we see. Believe me, every child you see out there begging in the street, and at night, every child who sleeps on the, in front of stores and so on, every child you see in the correctional facilities, like you has a father somewhere. I mean, mothers cannot bring forth children all by themselves. So every child that is born has a father somewhere. So the question is, where are the fathers? Where are the fathers? And we are only interested in these aphrodisiacs, and now I Bema, you become a man, and so you can humble women in bed and so on. But we forget that when we do that,
there's a
responsibility. Children come out of those things, and then, oh, I'm not the one. Let's check the date. I wasn't here at this time. You are also seeing this one. And then people run away from those responsibilities. They deny, and of course, sometimes when they know they cannot deny, then they escape, move out, and saddle these poor women with children they did not bargain for. And they can do their best, but without a masculine figure, there is something in the upbringing of children that only men and only the father can do. So in the absence of the father, no matter how a woman tries, there will be some deficiency in that child somewhere. Mothers are trying, keeping the children off the street, keeping the children off jails and so on. Some are trying, but how many are successful? So you look at all these, and you have a situation where 90% of such children, 85% of such children are all from dysfunctional homes. That's a sad one. That's a sad one. So the question is, where are the fathers? When fathers fail, this is what we see.
Right. But before we take leave of you, coming Sunday, 20th of June, is internationally acclaimed day to celebrate fathers. The pomp and the pageantry that comes with the Mother's Day will not be anywhere near.
No.
So I'm not even attempting to go there.
You shouldn't even go there.
So my only request is, what message do you have for us? I'm inclusive. As a young person coming up as a father, what message do you have for us so that we can be the game changers for the future?
Listen, being a man is not just subduing women in bed. Being a father is not just the ability to produce children. You can produce children, or children can be produced out of wickedness. When a man rapes a woman, it can result in childbirth. You can be a father, or you can produce children out of truancy when you are disobedient to parents. So being a father or being a biological progenitor of a child is not a big deal. It is easier for a father to have children. But then the question is, how many children have real fathers? And I keep saying real fathers are rare. Don't be counted among the failed fathers. Stand up to your responsibility. You are the priest of your home. You are the prophet of your home. When something is not going on right in your home, stand up as the priest. Pray for the children. Stand up as a prophet. Make declaration over the children. Turn their destinies around. Prophesy into their life. This is what God has made you. So you are not just a provider. You are not just a planner. You are not just a protector of the family or a projector of the family. You are also a priest and a prophet. And that is a major role that you should take up as a father, and stand in the gap for your children. Pray for them, prophesy over their lives, and turn their destinies around. You don't have to go to the mountains to be anointed to do that. God has already given that to you by virtue of being a father. Take up that mantle and let's see a change in our society.
Take up that mantle and bring a change, because God has already given that to us. Let me also remind you that Papa has authored several books, several of them. 6 are in the market, but 3 is short in supply, but more printout will come. He has this called Redemptive Leadership. Redemptive Leadership. And I believe that to be a good father is a leadership skills. You need to learn it. And this also is another one. Today is my first time I've seen this one. As that marriage means more. It's not just a matter of going to the altar to say I do. It takes a lot to say that I do. Sustain it to the end. This is also another one. And the book that we've been talking about, all our discussions hoovered around today, is this one, Dare to be a Dad. And I believe when you get a copy, it will help you a lot. This has been That Word series on Edify TV. My name is Nana Esiedu, and this program is kindly brought to you by the Imbus Herbal Mixture. When you hear on the radio, Police Nina Druno, the producer is a police officer. And in this time of COVID, if you need something to boost your immune system, all that you need is Imbus Herbal Mixture. Thank you for watching, and catch you in another edition of That Word series on Edify TV.